but not the same as this when he set the world hour record in 1972. Now the UCI have announced that Chris Boardman must beat the figures of Eddie Merckx of 49.431 kilometers on what is seen as a much more standard bicycle. They have now come out very strongly against the advanced machinery, the streamlining, again not in accordance with the feelings of everybody, but they are setting the rules, and Chris Boardman, in what will be his final race as a professional bike rider, is trying to leave the sport, establishing new figures for others to follow. And I can tell you there is a great atmosphere here in the stadium, and one of the reasons is that this morning, and if you're watching Eurosport you will have seen it, Yvonne McGregor has qualified fastest for the first time in her life as a 3,000 meters pursuiter, and she is looking now as though she might well go into the final tomorrow. She's got one more ride today, and I hope you'll join us on Eurosport with that a little later on. Now, as ever, I'm joined here by Russ Williams. Russ, you've been down and seen that machine. You've had a good look at it, and we're now waiting for Chris to come out onto the track. Tell us what you've seen.
Well, what I've seen so far is actually, the most interesting thing is he's got an awful long stem. It's actually 16 centimetre stem, and also the wheels, we're used to seeing disc wheels on the Pursuit. He's only got 16 spokes in the front, he's got 20 in the back, and for those technical people, he'll actually be riding 54 by 13, the cranks are 170, and also he's got special silk tyres. Now, you know, Phil, with silk tyres, they don't actually last too long. But the other interesting thing is when he comes out, will he be wearing, do you think, an aero helmet?
Well, you know, I'm not going to start a should he or shouldn't he go for this record, because that's for others to judge, I think. The fact is that Chris is going for it. We want him to establish new figures. He's entertained us at the very top of the world for 8 years. He has made a lot of friends in this sport, and not least you and I. There is Chris now. You can hear the applause for yourself. The hour record, and I can tell you that Chris has said only yesterday to close friends, I am not looking forward to this. I am looking forward to the end of my career doing other things, but I sometimes wish I didn't have such a big mouth, because the pressure is on him here in Manchester, his home track, which has provided him with so many happy memories, like in 1996 when he set the world record for the Pursuit at 4 minutes and 11 seconds, like when he set the absolute world hour record of 56.375 kilometers, and especially so like when he's won the Tour de France prologue on 3 occasions at Lille, Rouen, and indeed in Dublin. He's had some wonderful highlights. He's had his down spots too, with some bad crashes. You can see here just how nervous he is.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you look at his face, he's got deep concentration there. There's his personal mechanic from Credit Agricole, his French sponsor team. He's walking to the line now. He knows it's going to be 1 hour of pure pain. Now,
he wanted to ride with no helmet at all, in fact, and try to get as near identical situations as to the days of Merckx, because the old hairnets have gone now. But the UCI said he had to wear a new and modern style helmet, but not streamlined, and that's why it's not a streamlined helmet. But you see, even the UCI can't turn the clock back more than a quarter of a century, simply because the equipment has been surpassed with new regulations, and it cannot be used now. And even this isn't really his normal riding position, is it?
No, not at all. Also, the interesting thing is, I'm just wondering, Phil, is he using a heart monitor? I see he's got no actual gloves on, but Chris is one of the people who actually years ago started with the heart monitor, started with the different levels of training. We just look at his face now, the deep concentration.
So we are now looking at Chris Boardman on the start line, waiting for the clock and the gun to go simultaneously, of course, on the board at the end of the stadium, to the left of our commentary position, the name of the greatest cyclist, in my opinion, who has ever lived, Eddie Merckx. 1972, it says. The record to beat is 49.431 kilometers in the hour. The cheers now. Boardman has been through all of this before, like in 1993 in Bordeaux, where he set the record to take it away, which was held briefly by Graham O'Brien of Scotland, and then he came and had to take on the magnificent record of Tony Rominger, and he did it and set it at that magnificent level of 56.375. But he used on that occasion the position known as the Superman position, a completely streamlined position with a very special bike. All of that now banned by the world body, and we really do look here at times, Russ, that we are looking at the Vigorelli Stadium, perhaps, albeit it was outdoor in those days, and going back a quarter of a century, because the bikes now are so much different.
No, you're definitely right there. As you say, he's riding a French look bike. Another interesting thing is, of course, early in his career when he's a professional, he actually rode on an Eddie Merckx bike. And here he is today, trying to break Eddie Merckx, the Belgian superstar's record. And he's churning that big gear round.
Well, after 3 laps, 59.859, his schedule is 59.86. The man is riding like a clock after 3 laps. And we expect him to be slower, too, than Eddie Merckx. Eddie Merckx, over the first 5 kilometres, was very, very rapid indeed. We expect Chris Boardman to be slightly behind that schedule, because Merckx did, on that occasion, make a very, very fast start. And so, just to confirm, in fact, Russ, the gear he's using here, as you said, is 54.13. It's a pretty high gear to keep turning. There's Peter Keane, you could say the man who has created Chris Boardman over the years, and now Keane is spreading his talents into the British Cycling Federation as national coach. And this morning we saw Yvonne McGregor qualify fastest in the 3,000 women's pursuit.
Yeah, Chris has come a long way, especially with the help, as you say, with Peter Keane, who's also, as you say, the coach, Yvonne McGregor. And Yvonne had a fantastic morning this morning in the ladies 3 kilometres.
Well, he's gone through at 1:53, 6 laps completed. In fact, he's gone up on his schedule here by just over a second. He's scheduling literally to snip just a 10th of a kilometre off the record of Eddie Merckx. Merckx, by the way, his comment with nothing against Chris Boardman at all, he emphasises, to attack his record of 27 years ago is quite ridiculous. Francesca Moser, who took the record off Merckx, had similar comments to make. They said the riders that have come since, which includes Chris Boardman, of course, Miguel Indurain, Tony Rominger, they are men with distinct talent, and they feel their record should never have been tampered with. But that is their opinion. We are now watching the hoped-for establishment of a new world hour record now by Chris Boardman. The last time we will see this magnificent time trial rider in action. He has been the world champion. He's had 2 bronze medals at the World Time Trial Championship as well. He's been an Olympic gold and bronze medalist. He is, whatever happens, still the world hour record with the longest distance, and that will go with him when he retires.
Yeah, I'm just looking down at him, and obviously one of the most important things, he's actually using overshoes as well, so surely that must be quoted as aerodynamic,
well,
surely.
Minutes before he went off, they had to make a phone call to the world body in Switzerland to find out if he could pull on overshoes, and clearly the answer must have been yes.
Because obviously going back to Merckx's time, I think, was it in the early season classics when it was cold, they used to use a sort of form of overshoes by putting like sort of socks on and cutting holes out the bottom. And also the interesting thing is, I'm desperately watching to see if he actually gets out of the saddle at any time, or is he just going to sit in the saddle for the whole 1 hour?
Well, he's still riding behind Merckx at the moment. We were told that this would be the case, and it was not caused so long. He is riding to a absolute schedule. 3:45.23 is the 3 kilometres. 3:45.23 compared with the 3. Well, in fact, he's gone ahead of Merckx with a 3:31.84. So he started on his schedule. He's begun to accelerate. Now, Keane is obviously conveying this to him. He must be a little bit worried. He doesn't want Chris to go out of his depth too soon, surely.
No, but also what Peter Keane is doing is, I think if you're watching him, I think he's actually walking the line.
Yes, he is, yes. You might explain what that means, actually.
Well, basically what happens is they start at the pursuit line, and obviously if he walks forward, that means he's ahead of time, and if he walks behind the line, that means he's losing ground.
And at the moment, he's halfway around the banking, so he's well ahead of the line, so he's up on his schedule by quite some way. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, the crowd are clapping him into the home straight here at this beautiful velodrome, the fastest velodrome in the world still for the hour and for 4,000 metres individual. We lost a couple of the records that went in the Sydney Olympic Games in the Dunk Gray velodrome last month. But this is still one of the finest velodromes, and it has brought forth now so many great British cyclists for the future. Last night's team pursuit, where we got a silver medal, was a magical evening in the stadium.
Phil, on a personal note, what would you like Chris to do now? Obviously, if he can retire from the bike, he's going to spend some time with the family. What do you think he should do? Come back into the sport as a coach in some way?
I think Chris will take maybe a short time out, because I think mentally he's had enough. The pressures of staying at the top, but particularly of the type of racing he does, is extreme. And he's done it since 1992 as a big profile figure, and before that, of course, for many times as an amateur rider. I think a little time out, and we'll be hearing more from Chris Boardman. I feel sure of that, yes. Waiting for the 5 kilometre check now at 5:55.6 for Eddie Merckx. I think we're going to find Chris is going to go through here with a much quicker time. He's got a lap to go to the kilometre. He's riding, as he's done for years on this track, in a perfect style. He looks a little bit odd with that long extension. It's not the style we've seen him in, dragged out like Superman with the handlebars like tri-bars. In fact, that was the kilometre that's gone through, and I must confess, no, wait a minute, it's 6:04. So he's actually gone behind Eddie Merckx at 6:04. He's some 9 seconds slower at this point. I don't think there'll be any cause for concern. Well, this is Chris Boardman following the pursuiter's line around the track. That's the shortest way around the track, the measurement point of this 250-metre stadium, the black line, and that's what he's riding on as long as he can keep there, Russ. But you've known Chris since his amateur days. What's your memories of him?
My memories, well, as I say, we used to race together as amateur, especially on the track. But I think one of the ones that really stick out is actually when we rode to Tour Lanks, and Chris did one of these kamikaze attacks, and everyone thought, oh, we'll just let him go, let him go. And then all of a sudden we started to chase, and we started to chase. And it was just like, you know, when a rabbit keeps moving away and the hounds don't catch him. And we never actually caught him until the finish. And he won by, I think, at least clear 2 minutes. But that was as an amateur. And then, of course, he moved on to have a fantastic Olympics in Barcelona. And I think in Barcelona, it's really where it puts sort of cycling on the map, really.
Well, you probably heard the stadium announce there that he's up on his schedule by 6 seconds at 6 kilometres. And that's all that will concern Chris. If he gets to his schedule, he will beat Eddie Merckx's record by 1/10 of a kilometre. And if he can accelerate over those last few kilometres, he might go further than that. He might hit the 50-kilometre, which I think he would be extremely satisfied with. But to ride an hour record, Russ, it's metronome. You've got to just sit there and feel the pain for an hour, and it is such a difficult way to earn a living, isn't it? It's
a very difficult way to earn a living. But actually, when Chris first started, as I said before, by winning the Olympics in the pursuit, he was also a fantastic time trialist. I can't remember actually where he did it, or I know it's somewhere in this country, but for 25 miles he actually did 47 minutes and 15 seconds. I think that's still the record now. I mean, that's just incredible.
Well, we're looking at 49.637. That is deemed as the ride he is on at the moment. 8:27. So he is now 7 seconds up at 7 kilometres on his schedule. At 7 kilometres, 8:34 was his schedule, and at 7 kilometres, when Eddie Merckx broke the record, he went through in 8:19. So he's still behind Eddie Merckx's schedule. We expected this.
The other difficult thing Chris is going to have is, especially when you ride indoors on the track, is you tend to get so dry. Even as a spectator watching, you get dry. So what must it be like for Chris down there, where he's just actually forcing his body as far as possible to do this 1 hour?
Well, the thing about the stadium is, even though it's raining in Manchester, and there's nothing new in that, it's been raining every day here so far, but inside the stadium the atmosphere has been very, very humid indeed. Yesterday particularly hot, and even today the temperature has risen considerably since the arrival of about 2,500 spectators. Almost a full house has come to watch the farewell ride of Chris Boardman. The clock on the timing on the left there is continually adjusting with the kilometre markers, comparing with the record of Eddie Merckx at 49.431. You can see that Chris is still down on that schedule. 49.701 it is now. He's going out a little bit, but he is still ahead of his planned riding schedule to beat the record over the hour, and that's what's important. He will not be concerned with the situation at the moment. Well, this is in effect the second time the UCI, the world body, has taken a record away from Chris Boardman, because he established figures at 5,000 metres soon after he won that gold medal in Leicester in the Olympic Games in Barcelona. He travelled to Leicester, and because it looked like rain, he decided to go early. The crowd were half in the stadium when he attacked the 5,000 metres. He absolutely smashed it out of sight, and there were terribly strong winds because Leicester is an open stadium. And soon after that, they announced the record was defunct, along with a number of other records. And now he's done this wonderful hour record of 56.375, and that's gone in the bin as well. But I think tonight, and I'm hoping he'll put his name back on the books before he retires.
Yeah, and talking about records as well, I believe the ladies' record's been broken just a few weeks ago by Anna Wilson in Australia. And then since she's broke the record, Jenny Longo's gone off to Mexico to try to break it as well. So Chris is one of the superstars, and he started a trend here.
He started a trend, yes. In fact, Anna Wilson, the Australian girl from Victoria, she put on about half a kilometre on, and they had to attack Katie van Oosterhage's record, and not Jenny Longo. Jenny Longo is now in Mexico training, so I don't know how that fits into the new regulations, but she's going to go for it as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Francisco Moser. Of course, he broke the record in 1984 in Mexico City, and then, of course, in 93, Graham O'Brien did 51.596 in Hammer, Norway, and of course Chris came back again in 93 to break it, and then 94 was Graham O'Brien, and we had the superstar Miguel Indurain, and then 2 years in a row in 94 Tony Rominger, and of course the record in 96 Chris Boardman here in Manchester, 56.375.
11:45.778, and I'm waiting for confirmation that that is a 10-kilometre record there. Merckx went, because there's no assistance here, we can't see. Yes, 12:12 is what he's done. No, that's the 10 kilometres, 12:03. So Russ, he's 9 seconds up on his schedule now. He's been gaining steadily. In 4 kilometres, he's gained another 3 seconds on his schedule. He's still down on the world record of Eddie Merckx. That is 49.431. He's now 3/10 of a kilometre, still behind, but that really is nothing after only 12 minutes of cycling. So, the face of Chris Boardman, not giving anything away at the moment, still concentrating. The bike of the small tubes developed by a French manufacturer. The longer extension than normal, it's giving him a reach some 10 centimetres more than he normally reaches on a bicycle, but it's well within the new regulations.
But with an extra long stem, if you notice, he's still got the Chris Boardman flat back. Now that's where a lot of the power comes from, the bottom of the back there.
The master of the time trial. He's been the greatest exponent the world's ever known of the time trial, and still holds the British 40-kilometre or 25-mile time trial record, which will take some beating in many years to come, I think. Only one victory this year, the RTTC, the Road Time Trials Council, a circuit race championship. 50 wins in his career. And I think I'll stand to be corrected, but I think since he turned professional, he's only won one road race, and that was in the Pro Tour at Newcastle upon Tyne a few years ago.
But he's won many prologues.
Many prologues, many time trials. And he's toppled the best names in the sport. Still drifting out at the moment. Peter Keane looks quite calm. He doesn't give much away anyway, but he looks calm at the moment.
Talking about prologues, it reminds you back of 1994 in the Tour de France, the battle for the yellow jersey. It was supposed to be between Miguel Indurain and Tony Rominger. And up that drag to the finish, standing out in all his white gang gear, came that rocket, Chris Boardman.
Now at 12 kilometres, Chris is 10 seconds up on the schedule he is riding, but as you can see, he is still drifting away from the record of Eddie Merckx. Now that Merckx achieved at 12 kilometres 14 minutes and 20 seconds. Chris has gone through in 14:27, so he's 7 seconds slower at 12 kilometres than Eddie Merckx. Again, I don't think any reason for Sally Ann, Chris's wife, to start worrying yet. And the crowd, despite only 15 minutes at the 1 hour, haven't to slow down the applause yet. In fact, they're warming to it, I think, as he comes into the straights of the track here, where the big crowds are seated.
And he's certainly going to need his support when he gets into the last half hour, I believe, there. When it's really starting to hurt, he's really got to dig deep. At the moment, he's riding a controlled pace. He looks controlled. His arms haven't moved from that position. He's got his mouth slightly open, just concentrating on his breathing. but it must hurt so much pushing that big gear.
Well, we're asking a cyclist here to ride the track. To pull him back into the record now of Merckx, he's got to ride shortly at 50 kilometres an hour, or if you're English, 31 miles an hour at a constant speed. That is, even when we're looking at a record of 1972, still an incredible performance. Still following that black line. He'll dream about that tonight in his sleep, because that's all he's looking at. His concentration is 110%. He once said he never believed that the cheers of a crowd rose you to an occasion to do anything until he got the world hour record, and he says the crowd kept him going. And I think today, of all days, that could be very important for Chris Boardman, because he is counting the hours to retirement, and he wasn't counting the hours to riding this race. .49.789, still drifting. 49.431 is what we want to see come on the screen shortly. So you're probably hearing the Mike Smith, the announcer there. He's now gone 11 seconds of his schedule, but he's still about 7 seconds down on Merckx's schedule at this point. But the great Belgian legend started quickly. And I think Eddie Merckx had a reason, because he did say to me shortly after that, in fact he wore the old very short shorts which ride up on your legs, and halfway through he really did start to be saddle sore, and he finished as raw as a piece of meat and was in fact bleeding. And the hour didn't end quick enough for Eddie Merckx.
Also, I'm just wondering, in the past when Chris broke his record, he actually rode the Tour de France that year, didn't he? So he had that super...
And the Tour of Lombardy just a week before.
That's right, had that super strength.
Well, he was an incredible bike rider, but we know that, and that's if we have to turn the clock back 27 years, then let's do it with a man who's equally as good at this discipline as Eddie was, and that's Chris Boardman. Well, that's 18:16 we're hearing. Is at 15 kilometres, and he's now 12 seconds up at 15 kilometres covered. That's 60 laps of the velodrome done. He's going to have to cover it a total of 198 times to set the new record, Russ.
That's a lot of laps on this 250-metre track, especially the speed he wants to go and the speed he is going. And as you say, every time I'm watching him so carefully, and as I say, he's not moving at all from that black line. He's not got out the saddle. But he's closing on Merckx now, 15 kilometres. He is only 5 seconds behind. We are going to see that clock come closer to his timings shortly, I feel. Heading up to 16 kilometres now. 1928 was his scheduled ride at this point. He's coming through at 1917. So he's now 11 seconds up on his own schedule at 16 kilometres. Merckx at 16 kilometres went through at 1913. So we are beginning to close the gap quite well. And he's doing it just the right way as well. Just taking little chunks, bit by bit. 4 seconds, Russ, that's all he is behind Merckx now. And the only time he raises his head from the track is when he gets to Peter Keane, just to look to the left, and Peter Keane just gives him a nice little signal, thumbs up or fingers up. And obviously these two know each other so well from back in the amateur days. Any message from the face there of Chris, Russ? Is he suffering, or is he still driving, thinking positively, I suspect? He's definitely thinking positively. The thing with Chris is, though, he knows how to hide it. He's got his mouth slightly open there. There's gone from one finger to two finger there. Now, I haven't a clue what it means, but I think it means he is now within 2 seconds of Merckx's time at this point. I think you could be right there. Well, we know at 17 kilometres. This is when we might start to reverse. Already, Chris was scheduling to be 15 seconds slower than Merckx at the next checkpoint. Well, he's 12 seconds and 3... let me just check that before I tell you. I've got lots of paper here today, but in fact,
I think he is now 3 seconds behind Merckx. So maybe if you count the tenths, and I can't do that and commentate at the same time, it's just over 2. So he is closing.
He is close. I'm just reading some of the quotes from Chris Boardman. He says, what is your favourite training ride? He says, a very short one. I don't have a favourite, as they all tend to be painful. Now, if anything's going to be painful, this is going to be so painful. You think the Tour de France is hard going over those climbs, but the good thing about the Tour de France, of course, is when you get dropped, you can ride at your own speed, can't you? But here, on the track, there's no hiding.
That is absolutely right. There is no hiding, and what's more, everybody in this stadium is looking down on Chris, and so are millions of television viewers today here on Eurosport, around all of Europe. All of the commentators are here calling it. That's the target time we're looking for, 21:54. Chris is now running away from that. The clock is still moving out at 18 kilometres. He's coming through at 21:41. which puts him 13 seconds. He's continually gaining on his own schedule. At 21:41 though for Chris at 18 kilometres covered, is now just 1 second outside Merckx at this point, if not on the 25th of October 1972. So we are looking, Russ, at 19 kilometres, well inside the half distance for the hour record, well outside half distance of the hour record. He could be then on the Merckx schedules. Yeah, but talking about Eddie Merckx, you have to correct me if I'm with the information, but I'm sure at Mexico, didn't they put a special sort of surface just down on the inside between the black and the red line, because that's where he was riding? If I remember in the record books, they actually put a special surface just on the inside of the sprinters line, especially... But that was the old velodrome in Mexico, wasn't it, which is not like this one. And of course, Merckx's ride was done at altitude. That is another query being brought up by more than one person in the track today, saying if it's going to be a record of normal circumstance, why aren't we attacking a record of 30 Braca, which is shorter, because that was done at sea level? There's no answer. Not yet, anyway. And of course, if you're going back into the record books as well, I believe that Eddie Merckx, he didn't have a wool jersey, but his jersey was actually tucked into his shorts, wasn't it? Not the one-piece skin suits that Chris is using today. 22:54 at 19 kilometres. We are now still 1 second, because he never gained on his own schedule last lap. I'm wondering if Keane has slowed him down slightly there. He is still 13 seconds up on his schedule, as he was the previous kilometre. So he's still 1 second behind the Merckx time at the same point. Well, I can tell you, we're not seeing the track centre. Our cameras here following the rider, but the track centre is mesmerised. There isn't a person doing anything but standing and following Boardman around this track. I doubt there's a person in this stadium who doesn't want to see Chris Boardman retire today without this record. That is the situation at 20 kilometres. He's going to be well up on 24:19 as he goes through at 24:6. Still consistent now, remaining for the last 3 kilometres at 13 seconds ahead of his schedule at 20 kilometres. And we are now level with Eddie Merckx's record at the same point. Yeah, I'm just looking down at him. He's controlling his breathing the whole time. He's just trying to keep relaxed. Those arms must be hurting as much as the legs, but he's controlling his breathing, taking it nice and slowly. Well, the clock's showing 49.755. The record at the end of the hour has got to read better than 49.431. He is now riding onto the schedule of Eddie Merckx after only 20 kilometres. But Eddie also continued to accelerate, and Chris will have to continue to accelerate to close the gap, because he's still looking for 0.3 of a kilometre. So 25:19 there, they got him down as 13 seconds, they're saying, inside the schedule. He stayed 13 seconds for 4 kilometres now, and in fact, I may have misled you there, Russ, because I've gone through all of these papers here, and he is actually behind Merckx's record still. He's not up to it yet. He's still going to have to pick it up. But he's not in touch with it yet.
But I don't think we should panic yet. We've been into 25 minutes into this ride. Still got another 35 minutes to go. A man of this quality, he's been there before. He knows the pain. He's got the strength. He's got the speed. He's got everything. He's a complete bike rider. But can he pull it out here at Manchester in this 250-metre beautiful velodrome? Absolutely beautiful. I'm from South London. We've got nothing down this in London. It'd be lovely if Sports Council and the Lottery Funding could actually put a lovely velodrome like this somewhere within the M25.
Now, he is virtually on Eddie Merckx's record, and he could well be levelling in the next kilometre, waiting for the 22nd kilometre point. And to help you, Merckx's record time at this point, after 22 kilometres, was 26:33.16. He is now inside it. He has just dipped inside it by about a second. So he is now going ahead of Merckx's time at this point. Of course, he'll have to continue to lift the pace to head on to that record of 49.4. He's now looking at 49.7 if the hour was to run out. And he'd be very happy with that. But can the crowd lift him, Russ, to 50 kilometres?
The crowd can definitely lift him. When we get into the last half hour, the last 20 minutes, with a bit of luck, the crowd will be cheering so loudly he won't be able to feel the pain in his legs. And he's definitely going to have some pain in his legs. It's sort of building up now. You can just feel it just sitting here. All the lactic acids in those calves. They're going around the knees, they're going up the thighs. But he's got to stay focused, he's got to stay relaxed, he's got to think, this is it. There's no more training after this. There's no more going out in the rain. There's no more riding those classics on those Belgian cobbles with all that mud coming up into your eyes. There's no more Tour de France going over those climbs that are 20 kilometres long that only the billy goats go over. This is it, I'm going to get it all out now.
Heading up now to the 23rd kilometre. 27.57 was his target. He is now 27.44. I think we can begin to forget Eddie Merckx if he keeps rolling like this. He's still that consistent, 13 seconds ahead of his own schedule, which is timed for 49 at the end, allowing for maybe slowing, a 49.5 kilometre ride. He's allowed for a little bit slower towards the end. But if he can hold this sort of pace, then we would see 50. He's at 49.7 now.
You know what, Phil? I'm sitting here and I feel like going down in the middle and actually trying to push him round even quicker.
I don't think you're alone in that wish, actually, Russell, because the crowd here, I've never stopped cheering him. We've done 23 kilometres now and a half. 25 kilometres would be lovely to see in the half hour. We won't quite see that. .29.10 was his own schedule at 24 kilometres. He's well clear of that. He's up on Eddie Merckx. Things are going good at 28.57 now. He is, 28.57, yes. He continues to keep that completely perfect 13 seconds, which he has now done for 7 kilometres.
And remember, every 3 laps is a kilometre.
Incredibly consistent, and Peter Keane just keeping him there. Chris has the legs, Keane has the brain, and between the two of them, they've had a perfect decade of top-class cycling.
And that's what Peter Keane's got to do. He's just got to stay there, just give him the information that Chris wants. Chris doesn't want anyone on the sideline who's going to panic and start jumping around. Maybe when we get to the last 4 or 5 minutes, then we can jump around. And hopefully the whole crowd will be screaming and jumping around. But at the moment, just look at that picture. It's just beautiful. It's just poetry. He's just still there. He's letting his legs do the work. They're turning around 360 degrees.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to jump on you there. I was just looking at the half hour here. Is just short of the 50 kilometres. 49.6. He's come back fractionally there. Slowed very slightly, but the half hour, he's covering at an average of 49.684 kilometres in the hour.
Well, that's interesting. That's the first time, we've just gone over half hour, that's the first time he's moved his hands from the handlebars. He moved it slightly just to move his skin suit.
We're heading for the 26th kilometre now. He's aiming to be there at 31.36. He'll be there before that. But he is slowing slightly. And that, we hope, isn't a bad sign, as he's wobbling a bit off that black line as well now. Well, we're into 31 minutes now. He's got 29 agonising minutes, because these will certainly be the hardest. Peter Keane still looking calm. I bet he won't be in the last 15 minutes, because he'll try to get whatever's left in Chris Boardman's body for the last time of his career to put this distance as far to the 50-kilometre barrier as he can. Well, I guess the speaker in the stadium shouldn't be biased, but I think everybody is here. It's one man against the clock, against himself, and for a world record.
And of course, Chris has got his extended family here as well. He's got some teammates from his French team. He's got his own team mechanic. He's got his manager. He's got his assistant manager. They've all come here to see Chris do his last ride as a professional.
Yes, and we'll wake up tomorrow morning, and he's been a loyal professional to the same sponsor throughout his career. The sponsors have changed, but his manager and the organisation never has. He's gone with them wherever they've gone.
And of course, the team management he's got is absolutely wonderful, because, as you know, in the past, because you've been there at Tour de France and seen the nasty crashes, but they've always believed in him. They said, just go back, recover as best as you can, and we can do it the following year. I think of that nasty crash, he had in Ireland.
Yes, at Youghal. 27 kilometres. Oh, I was a lap too soon, sorry. There are no lap markers out on the track at all, so we're having to work out from just visual effects here, because there's nobody but Chris out there. He's coming up to the 108th lap of the velodrome. 32:48 he's scheduled. He's 10 seconds up. I'm a little bit worried, Russ, because he is slowing, or maybe Peter slowed him a little bit. So you see the time is getting tighter now, 49.620. Merckx's record is 49.431.
Yeah, we've been going for 32 minutes, but I still feel positive. I still think Chris looks good. He's still turning the legs. Remember, he's using that gear of 54/13. It's not an easy gear to push. You imagine a lot of these boys push this gear in the finishing sprint. When you think of those big sprinters like Cipollini and Tom Steels, this is the gear they'll be pushing for the last sort of 400 metres. Chris Boardman's trying to turn it round on a 250-metre track, down on the inside of the black line, and he's trying to go well over 30 miles an hour.
Well, he is continuing to descend at now 49.609 for the hour. Eddie Merckx never had the benefit of this great timing system back in 1972. Chris can, in fact, if he glances up down the back straight where he is now, he will see the record he is on at this minute. But I doubt very much he is looking. We're heading for 28 kilometres, which is 34:01 for Chris. He's coming through 9 seconds up on it, so another second lost that time, Russ.
Yeah, another second lost, but you're coming back to looking up at the scoreboard. There's no way he's going to be looking at the scoreboard. What's going to happen is that about in these last 25 minutes, last 20 minutes, the eyes will probably start to close just very slightly, because you're going to get so much pain. He's trying to squeeze every little bit of energy out he can. You know what it's like when you're going as hard as you can, especially in the interval training, which this guy's done a lot of. You're really trying to hurt.
Well, these will be the last pictures in action of Chris Boardman. It might be the time to tell you that I've just seen a brand new book out today called simply Boardman, his cycling career in pictures, and magnificent pictures by two of the finest cycling photographers in the business, Phil O'Connor and Graham Watson. It's around about £18, and if you want to know more, then you can go online on www.boardmanbook.com.
A lovely book for Christmas for any young boys or girls out there who want to be a good cyclist, or if you want to be the best cyclist, get that book and just follow in the footsteps of Chris Boardman.
I have to admit, I've been given what is, I guess, a copy today, and I've been fighting off the spectators who have wanted it, because it's a very nice book.
So, Chris Boardman, as he heads down the home straight, the crowd are really starting to stand up again. We've got 25 minutes to go.
Well, he's holding at that 9 seconds now. That's the first reversal. He stopped in the last 3 kilometres. Let's hope he's just dropped it down a notch. He's looking a little bit stressed at times when he comes into that head-on camera shot, but he's out down the back straight again now. Remember that time is slowly running out, and we're getting clearer the finish.
Some nice clear signals being given there by Peter Keane in the middle.
He's got to do 198 laps of the track. He's coming round for the end of 120 when he completes his 30th kilometre. He's not quite there yet. Now he's got one lap to 30 kilometres. He's done 119 circuits so far. Here he comes. He's looking at 36.26 is his schedule. He's still up on that. But at 36.18, he's now only 8 seconds, so he's still descending. Well, it's getting to the nervous stretch. At 124 laps, he'll reach the 31 kilometre point. Now, Eddie Merckx at 31 kilometres reached that point in 37 minutes and 33 seconds. And Chris is now running rather close to that time.
He's running rather close, but every time he comes round, the crowd are getting louder. I'm sure they can lift him. Just look at the concentration. He's still riding the black line. There's no panic from Peter Keane. But you can just feel the pain there in Chris's legs, in his whole body.
One to go to the 31 kilometre point. He's still looking straight in the eye of Merckx's record now. He was there in 37.33 in October 1972. Chris scheduled to be there in 37.39, always behind Merckx at this point. He's ahead of that, but it's now very close. 37.31. He's still 8 seconds ahead of his own record, but we are getting very close to be back on the Merckx schedule. At 2 fingers was the signal of Boardman's position against the Merckx schedule at that time.
The average speed, 49.559.
And the world record, 49.431. So he's now barely a tenth of a kilometre further than Merckx. Now surely, Chris, you're not going to allow this to happen an hour from your own home on your very last day of being a professional bike rider. This record must come back to you. At 128 laps to go, he will have covered 32 kilometres. He's 2 to go to that. Still thumbs up from Peter. He's not worried at this stage. Merckx did slow down, that's true, towards the end of his ride, but no one's to say that poor Chris won't do the same thing either. He has been racing now, as you can see, for nearly 39 minutes. He is 20 minutes of pain from glory at the end of his career.
I think he's just 7 seconds there. There's not much of a gap, as you say. It's coming down.
You're right, 7 seconds it was. At 32 kilometres, Merckx had gone through in 38.46, almost identical there to Chris. Now 33 kilometres, that's going to be a crucial time check, I think. And he's going into the part now when you're feeling tired. This is the psychological barrier now. Once he can get through this, if he gets through it well, I think he'll pick up again.
He'll definitely pick up. And also, like you said, we're getting down to the last 20 minutes. And 20 minutes for someone like Chris is just a 10-mile time trial. So if he just keeps thinking, right, I've done this, I've been national champion many times in the 10-mile time trial, that's all I've got to do now is a super time, and I can break this record.
Well, when he comes round, we're at 33 kilometres covered. We are about 20 minutes on the end of the hour. 39.59 at 33 kilometres. He is now identical to Merckx at this point. Identical, almost to the 1,000th of a second. Unfortunately, I think it's the wrong way at the moment.
Well, with a bit of luck, that the crowd's going to lift him, as I say, in the last 20 minutes.
He's still ahead of the schedule he proposed to be at that point. He's still 6 seconds ahead of it. But he's going to have to lift it up, because the Merckx record is 49.431. Currently, if this ride were to end, as you can see, he's at 49.508. And dropping.
So he's still cranking around those 170 cranks. Remember, he's only got 16 spokes in the front, 20 in the back. The spokes are slightly elliptical. He's turning that 54 by 13 gear, and that stem, the handlebar stem, is 16 centimeters. That's why his arms are out so far.
Well, at this point at 34 kilometers, 41.17 was the scheduled arrival of Chris Boardman. He's still ahead of his planned schedule. At 41.13, he's plus 4 seconds. But at 41.13, he is now riding almost to a thousandth of a second perfect to what Eddie Merckx did at the same time 27 years ago. Well, 34 kilometers, we're looking for the finish of 49.5. There's still a ways to go.
I'm just watching in there. That's the first time, 41 minutes of riding. That's the first time he's got out of the saddle. Just got out of the saddle. You know what it's like? Just to relax the lower back, just to take the pressure off the legs a bit, just like when you're climbing.
Remember that gone is all the streamlining that has been developed over the last 10 years. Those magnificent men on their flying machines. And somebody suggested that Chris Boardman should attempt the new record under new regulations and go out with flying colours. As he said the other day, I wish I didn't have such a big mouth, because he said yes. And now he's had to pull himself together in a season which has not been a great one for Chris. One small time trial win in his own country, no international victories, not a great Olympic Games either, but he's still been a great bike rider.
He's been a great bike rider, as we all know. 92 is when he won the Olympics and put cycling on the map. 93, his first professional year, he broke the world hour record in 52 kilometers, 0.27. And of course, he also won the Grand Prix Eddie Merckx. And Eddie Merckx it was the time trial. Eddie Merckx is the record he's trying to take.
.466 it says on the clock now. He has fallen behind the record of Eddie Merckx. It has happened at the 35th kilometre. But Chris is still 3 seconds ahead of the schedule he has set himself to beat that record with a fast finish over the last few kilometres. If he is going down because he's tired and he's not going down to reckon on his schedule, then he's not going to do it. Otherwise, he could pick himself up.
It's so difficult sitting here thinking, is Chris riding, has his legs blown, is he riding to a schedule? I'm sure, the way we've known Chris for so long, I'm sure he'll be riding in a schedule.
Well, he's holding his schedule. He is 3 seconds slower than Eddie Merckx at the same point, but he is 3 seconds ahead of his own planned arrival at the 36th kilometre. So the skies over Manchester may be black, but they're still quite bright inside this stadium. Well, people once said to me that watching one cyclist on the track can become very boring. If you were in this stadium with me and felt the atmosphere and looked out across at the crowd, just loving every minute of this, then you'd prove everybody wrong. So heading for 37 kilometres. He's 12 kilometres away from the end of his career. He's looking to be there at 44.55. We're now concentrating on his schedule. Forget Merckx for a moment. He needs to pass through at 37, better than 44.55.96. Chris Boardman is suffering now, probably like he's never suffered before, because his form, admittedly, is not as great as it was. And he's gone through at 44.53. He's holding on, but it's slipping down. It's now just on 2 seconds the difference. And Merckx had gone through 2 seconds quicker. Well, from the day that I had the privilege of working on Australian television in Barcelona in 1992, I was supposed to cheer for the Australians, but I'm afraid the commentary swung a little bit when Chris Boardman caught Jens Lehmann in the final and became the Olympic champion. From that moment on, he became a known name throughout the world of cycling, and he's chosen Manchester and an attempt at the new world hour record as his farewell to a sport he has ridden so well in. 46.08 he's looking for at 38 kilometres. He was 2 seconds better than his schedule at 37. He's now behind the Mercs at this point. This will be the time round this time. He's virtually sprinting for the line. He's looking at beating 46.08.68. He's still doing it. He's still 2 seconds, as he has been now for 2 kilometres. Merckx had gone through at 46.07.
Only 1 second here, but as you know, 1 second to get back can be awfully hard when you're trying to go as hard as you possibly can, and you've got to raise that extra little bit. 1 second's only a few metres on this 250-metre beautiful pine track, but when your body's turning all the way from your toes to your ears, you know you've got to pull it out.
He's now back in front of the Merckx record, so be it by hundredths of a kilometre, but he's back in front, and maybe he's now beginning the reversal rush where he's going to lift it. Remember, his schedule is only to beat this record by 1/10 of a kilometre. We're waiting for the 39th kilometre. Inside 15 minutes, in fact 13 minutes to ride of his career. 47.21 we will look for on the screen. Peter Keane, still as calm as a cucumber, knows that as far as he's concerned, this man's legs are going round exactly as he planned them to. 47.21, he's still up. Is he accelerating? It's getting dicey, but at 47.20 is now 1 second out of his schedule, and at 47.21 he is now only 0.8 of a second quicker than Merckx. And as you can see, 2,000th of a kilometre better.
As you say, we're down to 13 minutes to go. He's really got to dig, and dig even deeper. He's got to forget about what's happened in the past. He's concentrating, he's looking at that black line. He doesn't want to make a mistake. If he goes down too low, he hits one of those sponges, he could possibly lose a second, and that second could take the record off him. There's Peter Keane, world-class performance director, Chris Boardman's own personal coach. He's had him since he was an amateur when at university.
12 minutes to race. The crowd are still cheering, as they've never stopped from the moment he left the start house. And now they've responded to the announcer with another cheer down the home straight. We're looking at 48.34 next lap. That'll be the 40th kilometre covered, as we're now inside 12 minutes to go to the finish. We're looking at a rider here who could have been plucked out of the storybooks of the 1970s on a bicycle like this. And that's the record he's aiming at. The record of Eddie Merckx, set on the 25th of October 1972 to establish new figures under new rules at world level. And we're waiting for 40 kilometres, and he's gone through, and he's still on just his schedule. "40 kilometres covered." And now Boardman is going to have to simply fight like he's never fought before. Well, we're looking there at Sally-Ann briefly, Sally-Ann Boardman, watching the clock and watching her husband for the last time in action. It is desperately close, Russ.
It's desperately close, but we've got 11 minutes to go, and both sides of this crowd are going absolutely bananas. When he goes down the home straight, they stand up and scream. He goes down the back straight, and the back straight are trying to get louder on the home straight. When we get down to the last 4 or 5 minutes, both straights will be up, screaming like mad.
He is now on his schedule of 49.46.84. He's gone behind by 1/10 of a second. Behind his own schedule. Merckx at 41 kilometres had gone through at 49.47. It is desperate now. It is all or nothing in the last 10 minutes of the hour.
As he went down the home straight there, the mouth was starting to get even wider open. You can see his hands, his fists are gripped tightly. You can see he's trying to control the breathing. We're inside 10 minutes. What pain is this guy going through?
Well, we've seen the perspiration running off his jaw there, as he knows now it is pure guts and tenacity, like he's never suffered before, except perhaps in the Tour de France, where he's had some rough days and some good days. When we come round to 42 kilometres, we're looking at 50.59. He is going to be very, very close to an identical time. We hope we don't see anything worse than that. We don't want to see 51. He's got to fight now. This is survival. I think the commentator in the stadium here has just about lost his voice. He's trying to raise the crowd, but they don't need a lot of raising. They're enjoying this. And it's 51:01.
Yeah, I think he's just dropped it slightly there.
Yes.
He's got to pick it up. Come on, we're down to 9 minutes. You've got to lift it now, Chris.
He's gone a second behind. And he's at 43 kilometres in 3 laps. He's now pedalled 128. He's pedalled 169 laps of the stadium. He's got to pedal 198 to get the record.
Everybody in the stadium's actually looking at this. Even the security guards have come down to the side and they're cheering as well.
Well, it's about now. He'll regret, I think, suggesting this, but look at the face of this man. He is not going to give up. He just glanced slightly to the left there.
So down the home straight he comes again. He's still got such a beautiful line, even though his whole body is totally exhausted. All you'd want to do is just fall off your bike, but he knows he's got to keep it going for just 8 more minutes. He wants this record of Eddie Merckx. You talk to anybody in the street about cyclists in England and they say Chris Boardman. Anyone in the world and they say Eddie Merckx, and he wants to rip Eddie Merckx's record apart.
He's gone 2 seconds outside now of his schedule at 43 kilometres. And he's scheduled here to be half a second quicker than Eddie Merckx at that point. So he's now behind completely. And the figure's showing you 49.385 and slowing down. He's falling behind the Merckx record now, which is 49.431.
The clock's still ticking down. I've got 52:45, so that's less than coming down to 7 minutes to go.
3 seconds down.
3 seconds down. He's got to lift it over 7 minutes. Come on, Chris. Everybody wants you to do it. What an ambassador to the sport. Back in '92, got that gold medal in Barcelona, put cycling right at the front.
It is going to be tough. In fact, apparently, before he started, a couple of hours before he started, he thought whatever time he did would count. But the UCI put him straight on that, and he said to be the new world record holder, he had to beat the record of Eddie Merckx. And that may have thrown him a little bit. 53.25, he's now 2 seconds. He's holding at 2 seconds. Merckx had gone through at 44 in 53.25.
Yeah, and I was just looking down at Peter Keane, and Peter Keane was getting some messages, and Peter Keane wasn't actually standing up straight, he was bending over, so he's starting to get excited as well. He realises we've got just over 6 minutes. Come on, Chris, you've got to lift it now. We all want it.
20 laps to go, Russ. There's no longer a schedule now. It's as fast as your legs will carry you to the end of your career.
You're right there, 20 laps. All he's got to keep thinking of is there's no more training out in the rain. There's no more intervals. I can just relax, but I want this record. I want it. I'm hungry.
Well, you can hear them shouting 6 minutes to go, but it is 20 laps to establish the record in that 6 minutes. It's going to be a tough call now. 54.37 we're looking for at 45 kilometres. At 180 laps done at 45 kilometres, we want 54.37 on that screen. I think we're going to see 54.39, but there's his wife now trackside and shouting him on. In fact, 54.40. He's gone just over 2.5 seconds behind.
Yeah, it's getting really desperate now. It must be desperate because, I say, his wife's out there. She's right on the line. If he just looks up and thinks of her, maybe he can pull it back those last few seconds.
Sally Ann is cheering her husband on for the last time of his career, and I don't think he's going to get it, but he's going to go down with a terrific fight. 49.431 we want to see on the left. We're seeing slightly less as we're heading into the last 5 minutes of racing and looking for the 46 kilometre time if he's going to get the record of 55.50.
As you said, 5 minutes ago, remember he started in '92 at the Olympics, and that was a 4K, and that was about 4 or 5 minutes. So if he could just keep thinking, I can do it. How fast did I go back there in '92? And I want to retire. I want this record.
He shouted at Peter Keane there something, I don't know what it was. Peter Keane is walking the wrong side of the line for the schedules now, which explained earlier. If he's forward of the finish, they're up. If he's downwind of the finish, they're down. And there he is in the home straight. 3 seconds is the signal. The clock stops exactly 3 seconds down. He's still plus 3 seconds, Russ. Can he sprint home?
He can definitely sprint home. We all wanted to sprint home. Everyone in the stadium, everyone in the country, everyone in Europe, worldwide, they want this boy, Chris Boardman, to get this record.
They do. I think there'll be 2,500 volunteers to ride these last 3 kilometres now, but there aren't any. It's got to be down to Chris. He's been a lonely person throughout his cycling career. All of his performances have been done by him, by himself, against the watch. And this is his last rendezvous. At 47 kilometres, we're looking for 57.03 for the record. He's still inside, still outside that.
He's still slightly outside, but he came past Peter Keane, and Peter Keane was actually moving his arms as well to tell him, come on now, you've got to dig deep, you've got to dig right from the bottom of your heart, because you really want it. We're down to about just over 4 minutes.
I think the crowd are worn out with shouting now, but they're trying their best to will this man from on Merseyside home. There's Sally Ann. I'm sure his 4 children are here as well. 57.03 when he gets round to the stopping of the clock this time. He's not going to be there. He's got to be cheered home by Sally Ann. He's slipping away a little bit. It's still 3 seconds. A sprint away from the record of Merckx at 49.376. The record is 49.431.
And you saw Sally there saying, come on, Chris, just do it, come on.
It's a sprint. Chris has brought this stadium to life like he's done so many times in the past, not least in 1996 when the World Championships were last here. He's wandering a little bit above that black pursuiter's line now. That's tiredness. There's his wife shouting him down.
He's got 2.5 minutes to go. Now what he's got to think about, he's got to think of what would Jason Queally do in this position? How fast can Jason do it? I can go just as fast. Tuck down on that black line. I can do it.
Well, there's not a person sitting down now in the stadium. 58.15. He's got to be back in. If he's showing any signs of improvement, at best he must be back in 58.16 and a half. And this crowd is deafening now as he swings round past his wife into the home straight again. 58.16, can we get there? No, 58.17.8, but he is coming back. It is inside 3 seconds.
Yeah, he's definitely coming back. He's starting to pick the speed up. Peter Keane started to move around. Peter Keane has got rid of all his clocks. All he's thinking about now is, come on, Chris.
Look at the time now, 49.401. The record is 49.431. It is still counting, 49.406. Boardman might pull the house down here. He's scheduled for a 1/10 of a kilometre beating, and he might come down to it. Boardman now is living on a wing and a prayer and the talent that he once had a few years ago.
Just watching Peter Keane there in the home straight. He's giving him signals. I say he's got rid of his forward. He's just telling him to pull it out now. He's got to go.
1 minute less to go. 49th kilometre is on the horizon. He must go through. He must go through in 49.29 at the outside. He's down the back straight again now. The clock is almost finished, as you can see. 59.19. He's got to come back by 29. As he comes into that back banking now, into the home straight again. He's sprinting down the track. Come on, they're saying it's 2.5, 49.29. It is possible, it's possible, it's possible. It is absolutely possible. 4.21 it says. 4.13 is the record. It is a desperate finish to a brilliant career. Well, the crowd are going to carry him home if they can. They are all now standing up in the stadium. This is a magnificent show of defiance by Boardman. He'll tell us shortly he's never suffered like this. 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1, the gun will go. It says 49 at 3.3. The record is 4.44. They're saying 4.44. They're saying it's a record because the record is 49.431. I don't think as long as we live we'll ever see an hour record finish like that. That is the most unbelievable sprint that we've ever seen. And what a way to end your career, Russ.
Yeah, and they say he's got it by about 13 metres. You step back a few laps, 4 or 5 laps out he was down. He picked it up. There's a good British flag there, Chris Boardman.
That was the most brilliant finish. This man refused to lay down and die. The proud face of Peter Keeley had his moments when he must have felt worried there. That was one of the most outstanding performances by Chris. He lived on actually just pure willpower to achieve. It is saying that the record is now established over Eddie Merckx of 49.444 kilometres. The record erstwhile was 49.431. Chris Boardman leaves this sport as he came in, a most brilliant champion. And it hurt. Well, Russ, he proved it.
All I can say is 13 metres. You do 1 hour and you get the record by about 13 metres. Look at the pain.
And what does he say about